Our session component will have two implementations. One, file session, which is going to use the actual file system, and the other one, ArraySession, which is going to be used for testing. Now, because we have two implementations, you would expect them to have exactly same interface. That's why we are going to start with a simple contract. Interface contract is the name of the contract that we're actually going to be using with our session implementation. So let's create a new class and call it contract. Now, this is going to be an interface. So I'm going to just select the interface. If you're not using PHP Storm, simply specify the namespace and then interface contract, and that's all you need for now. And this file needs to reside within the session directory. Okay, so we're going to start with specifying what methods we expect both of the implementations to provide. The first method that we definitely need is the way of starting the session. So public function start. And because we are within the interface, we're specifying just the interface, just the method that we expect the implementation to have. We don't actually provide any implementation. It's just a method name, two brackets, and semicolon at the end. So let's provide some doc blocks for this method. It will return void. There's not going to be any value returned from this method. And start session is what this method will do. Next method that both of the implementations will have to provide is method that will return all of the sessions. So method name perhaps all. So public function all, two brackets again, and semicolon. And this one will return array because both sessions will be stored within the array, and get all sessions for the summary of the method. Okay, next method, and let me just create a few new lines so we can shift it up a little bit. So next method will be the method which checks whether the key actually has been set within the session. So public function has, and it will take one argument, which is going to be the key. And doc block will return boolean, either true or false, whether it exists or not. And the key will be of a string type. And summary for this method, check if session has a given key. There we go. So that's the has method. The next method will be the method that will allow us to set the session. So public function set, and it will take two arguments. First one will be the key, and then the value we want to associate with this key. And again, doc blocks, it will return void. Set method will not return anything. The value might be anything, so mixed. The key we specify as it might be a string, it could also be an integer, so I'm just going to put mixed as well. Okay, and then session summary is going to be simply set session. And after this set session, now that we can set the value, we should also be able to obtain that value from within the session. So the get method seems quite reasonable here. So public function get, and we're going to specify what key we want to get, basically value set associated with which key. And this one can return mixed because we don't know if it's going to be string, integer, anything else, floating point or anything like that. And the key will be, again, mixed as well because it might be integer, it might be string, and so on. So mixed for this as well. And this one simply gets, so get session. And the next method that we need to have available on both implementation is the way of removing a given session by key. So public function remove, we specify the key, and now we are going to again use mixed for the key. It will return void, meaning it won't return any value, and then remove session by key. And the last one will be to destroy session completely, basically resetting everything, removing all of the sessions. So, oops, rather than starting with the doc blocks, let's just specify public function destroy. And let's now add the doc blocks. return void, it won't return anything, and summary is going to be destroy session. There we go. So that's all methods that both of our implementations have to have. So I'm going to save and close this file. And now within the session directory, I'm going to start with the array session. So new class array session. And this one, I'm just going to remove these spaces, will implement this contract interface. And as you can see, it highlights everything straight away because it knows that there are methods that we need to implement, methods that this contract requires that any class that implements it has the implementation of them. So I'm going to quickly add method stubs, which is going to basically add all these methods without any implementation with them. So you can see we have start, we have all, we have has, set, get, remove, and destroy. If you know, again, if you're not using PHP Storm, you don't have this sort of macros, just simply type these methods by hand and then obviously follow with the videos so that we can actually add these implementations. Okay, within a session, what we're going to start with the array session, I'm going to start with a private static property called session, and that's going to be set to array. And let's just add the doc block just with the var tag. Okay, to start the session, what I'm going to do is static and use our property session equals array. So we start in the new session. If we want to return all of the values stored within our array session, then we simply return static session. Because it's an array, it's going to return all of them, and return tag tells us that it returns array. Then we have has. We're checking if the given key exists within our session. So we're going to return is set and then static session, and we check for a given key. Or we could simply do array key exists. It's entirely up to you. Now, one thing about isSet, if we just open our browser, navigate to the php.net, and let's check what isSet does. IsSet, and how does it differ from actually array key exists? Determine if a variable is set and is not null. So if we associated null with our session key, then this one would return false. So perhaps rather than isSet, if you know that you're not going to be associating null values, then isSet is fine. But if you're not sure, then use array key exists. And in that case, we are going to put key as the first argument and then the array, which is our session. And I think this is going to be slightly better approach. Okay, next we are going to have the set method. So set method simply use static session, puts the key and value that we want to associate with this key. And that's all that the set method of this array session will do. Now for the get method, we are going to first check if the value exists, if the key exists actually on our array. So if an exclamation mark, this has, we're checking if it has not, basically if it doesn't have, because we have this exclamation mark here, it doesn't have this given key, then we return null. Otherwise, we simply return static session and we pass the key to obtain the value associated with this key. Now for the remove method, we are going to unset static session and then key. So that's going to remove the given entry by the given key, and then destroy. What we need to do is simply static session and set it array to an empty array again. We could basically call starts this start rather than doing the same thing again, but let's just stick with this for now. Okay, so that's our array implementation. We can use it with the test, but I'm going to write the test actually at the end once we have the implementation done. This time I'm going to do it the other way around. Rather than starting with the session with the test, I'm actually going to write it once we have it already. Okay, so let's save this, and next implementation will be the file array. So file array, which is going to be used with the live system. Okay, let's remove all this. And again, it implements our contract. So all these methods that we declared within the contract have to be available. Now, with the file session, what we're going to do first, for start, what we want to do is to use the session underscore start function, and it takes an optional associative array of options that will override the currently set session configuration directives. I'm going to only specify one and leave all the remaining ones as default. And the one I want to set is save underscore path, because I don't want to store my sessions within the default directory that the system has set. I want to store it within my storage and then session directory, so I can easily check them whenever I want, remove them whenever I want, and so on. Remember, our public directory is where all the requests from the outside of our network will be sent, so they won't have access to the storage directory because outside of the public directory. This is what everyone's going to have access to, basically, so to our CSS, JavaScript files, and our index.php. But outside of this directory is the zone where they don't have access to. So then we have storage and session. This is where I want to save them all. So real path we start with, again, dir constant, magic constant, and then we want to get out from this directory which we're currently in, which is session, to utilities. So it's one level, then second level to app, and third level to login, which is the root of our project. So one level, second level, third level. And then I'm going to concatenate it with .env and get again method. And where do we store the path to our storage, session storage? If we check our env, you may remember we have this session path which points to storage and then session directory. So let's copy the name of this variable, paste it in, and then if it's not declared, if it hasn't got any value associated with it, let's just overwrite it by using storage /session. So that's what we want to save all our sessions. So our session will start here and it will save all of the sessions to this directory. So that's our session start for the file. It shouldn't be actually file array, it should be file session. So let's quickly rename it file session. So rename the file and then rename the class as well. File session, not file array. Okay. Then we have all methods, and all method will simply return the super global session, because super globals are all arrays, so that's going to return obviously the session array which we're interested in. Then for has, we're going to return, and again we could return lowercase, we could use a set, but let's do array key exists again. We pass key as the first argument and session as the second. As you can see, it's pretty much the same way as when we were working with array, because obviously super globals are all arrays, so that's why it's going to work exactly the same way as with the other one. And now if again for set we have session key lowercase and we associate the value with it, so that's setting the session. Then to get the session, we're going to do exactly the same check as before. So we're checking if our session actually exists by using the has method and passing the key as argument. If it doesn't, then we return null. Otherwise, we return session and value by its key. Okay, to remove the session, same situation as before. We unset session and then the key. And to destroy the session, we have a function called session underscore destroy. And that's our file session implementation also completed. So we can now save this file and close it. We can close this .env as well, and our session component is now ready. Now in the next video, we are going to actually write tests to make sure that this component actually does what it's supposed to.